Hey guys, welcome back. This is another Dragonflight walkthrough for Season 1. This one will be on Azure Vault. This video was done on 17 Fort Thundering bolstering actually on beta, which is probably world first bolstering beta key. This is an extremely technical dungeon, so it's long, technical, kind of like the Sanguine Depths of this expansion kind of thing. Although I don't think it's quite as bad. It's been tuned a little bit better already, which is a good sign. Something you should know too is you can't really skip much trash in here. You have to pretty much only skip a couple mobs here and there, and I'll tell you which ones you should probably skip for now unless they tune them better. So as soon as you start, there's a whelp over here. You don't want to pull that whelp because it'll activate these three dudes if you do, and they will absolutely fuck you up. Alright, so then these three flowers, the only reason I'm pulling these, you could actually walk straight through here without pulling any of these side packs, but I'm pulling these because we need a little bit of extra count, and they aren't too bad if you're in a coordinated group. If you're not in a coordinated group, I would just pull these solo as your first pull and that's it. Or maybe do this pull over here first and then come back that pull afterward. Because each of these flowers has a mandatory kick. And it's on like a 12-second cooldown. So there's 6 flowers in this pull now. They're all going to cast at some point, so I actually need 6 stops. Or what I did is I did 3 kicks on the flowers that are walking in from behind. Coming from back there, and then I'm going to sweep these 3 casts to stop them with a CC as well. So you could actually use kicks or an AoE stop. AoE stops are probably better in general. And then as of this weekend, you can also kick this cast from the tree, the erratic growth. It goes on one player, it stuns them, and an AoE around them. Well, it turns them into a tree, and then when the healer dispels them, it'll stun people in the circle. I believe that's how it works. Either way, it's like a very annoying kick or dispel kind of mechanic. These flowers, the Mystic Vapors is the important thing. Like I said, you can see them casting all over the place. We assign kicks and AoE stops, but this one I believe goes off, and I'll show you what happens. So everybody in the group just got Mystic Vapors. That is dispellable. It's mass dispellable as well. Or Revival can take care of it, but that does like a massive dot on the party. If you get more than one stack, you're probably in big trouble. Which is why these mobs are so technical. So I use Ring and Sweep during this pull to stop them. I'm pretty sure other people use AoE CC as well. And we still had casualties. This is a hard pull. I wouldn't recommend this in a pug. This is bolstering. As you can see, that tree got very large. Probably would have killed me if it lasted much longer. Alright, so that's one pull. The second pull coming up is going to be the same mobs, 4 flowers. Because you want to clear a path so you can go through here and then drop down to the first boss. You don't really want to pull any of this other trash. All this stuff is just not worth it in my opinion right now. And as you can see, there's also more of those whelps patrolling around. So these whelps, if you step inside their circle, they'll start casting an ability called Shriek. And they will summon all these like petrified mobs off to the side to fight you. And all those mobs that are petrified are terrifying. You'll fight versions of them later in the key. They're the Arcane Fury mobs is what they're called, I think. They cast piercing shards. And that's going to be a big focus for you as a tank later in the key. So yeah, clean up these 4 flowers, use any stops you can, don't let them cast. Luckily, lots of classes have stops now, healers have kicks too. So even in a pug, it should be not too hard to stop all of them. Alright, so you drop down, this is the first boss right here, he's petrified in the middle of the room. You have to kill all 3 of the trees around the room to summon him. I don't think you have to kill the slimes, but you might as well kill the slimes too, because they're in the way. The slimes don't really do much except for an on-death swirly that's very annoying. Goes off pretty quick and it pretty much one-shots. This is bolstering, so I was trying to get rid of some of the slimes first. You can divide up the pulls here. Like if you want to pull all 3 trees together, you can. You just have to coordinate kicks on them. Or you can pull all the slimes and then the trees, or you can just pull the whole room and tell everyone to wait on aggro. Keep in mind too that they've changed this dungeon a lot. I'm making this video 2 weeks before Dragonflight launches, but I have a feeling that a lot of this will change anyway. So I pulled some of these slimes into this tree right here. It did bolster him, I was testing that. So I'm a little scared of that tree. This is like when your boomkin summons tree nits, but one of them is just absolutely jacked. Yeah, so the only other thing the trees do besides that erratic growth channel is Oh, so you can see someone got stunned right there. I'll pause it. So that's a cast going off that wasn't kicked. So they have to get dispelled. But if they get dispelled and someone's standing like here per se, then that person gets turned into a tree as well, or stunned or something. I can't remember, one of the two. But otherwise, the trees just put down these puddles. The initial damage, like if you see the puddles land right there, that doesn't actually do damage all the way around it. Like I think you could be standing right there, which was technically inside that swirly, but you'd be safe until this puddle expands to that point. At least last time I tried that. But yeah, these trees aren't too bad. It's kind of annoying for everyone trying to dodge swirlies. And then I can start talking about the first boss too. So once you get to the first boss, after this stuff is cleaned up, he has some RP and then he spawns. Leymor is his name, and this is a pretty fast-paced fight for a tank. You need to position him pretty well. So you pull him wherever to begin with. And then shortly after, you'll do these sprouts. So these sprouts will go all over the room. And the goal is to get rid of as many of these as you can. This is kind of like the Spore Caller Zoncha boss from Underrot, if you guys remember that one from BFA. So you want to clean up as many of these trees. Luckily, if only 1 or 2 remain, it's not the biggest thing in the world. Like, you'll live, the party will just take some more damage than they would have if there were 0. So that was the tank hit. Let me back up a little bit. Infused Strike. It's very hard. If you can see my health there, it's magic damage on impact, and then also leaves a 10-second dot that does more magic damage. So very scary for tanks. This is only 17 on Fortified. That would have literally one-shot me on Tyrannical with current tuning. But then yeah, so he does Infused Strike, and then you need to flip him around and have him in position to frontal cone these trees right after you get frontaled by infusing strike. So I don't even know if this will hit both trees. Hopefully it does. But I think the frontal is something like this radius and width on the cone. So he'll do Erupting Fissure, and you can sidestep this as well. Which I did not right there. It looks like it did hit both those trees, which is nice. So I got 4 slimes. That's probably like the happy medium. You can get like 4 or 5 slimes, sometimes 3 slimes, and that's fine too. Or 3 saplings turn into slimes when they get hit. Same thing. And then right after that, he does another mechanic. So this is all really fast paced. It's a Dragonflight dungeon. So he puts, when he's putting that explosive brand cast out right after all that, he does a swirly around him too. If anyone's standing in that circle around him, they're gonna get hit for double damage and die. So you gotta make sure you and the melee both move out right before that. And he's going to push everyone back and apply the circles to them that'll break the saplings. So everyone gets hit by explosive brand here, takes some damage. Grit actually got hit by 2 and almost died. He actually lived that. I'm surprised he lived. And then we all kind of spread out and tag all these saplings with the circles, and then I have to grab threat on them as the tank. A lot to do in like just a few seconds. We're only 40 seconds into the fight. They all blow up once you get aggro on them. They die pretty quick. And then we're back to the... And then immediately right now, we're back to the first part of the fight. So you need to... As soon as these trees spawn, you need to get your ass over there somewhere to like line up some kind of frontal in this direction on, you know, for the trees. So that's where I'm going to head, I think. He's going to Infusing Strike you in the process, so you have to, 1, be watching your position for the frontal that's coming up, and 2, get ready to take an Infusion Strike. So here's Erupting Fissure. Here's I'm showing where you can dodge it now correctly. I got 3 slimes there, and that's fine. I think this buff on the boss right here is showing how many saplings are up that are buffing his stomp that's coming up. Let's see if that goes down when we break these. Yeah, so they went down to 3, so we just broke 8 saplings. I'm picking up threat on the saplings. Now the boss is going to cast the Consuming Stomp, I think it's called. Yeah, here it goes. And with 3 stacks, it does... Only did like 40% of people's health right there. It's not too bad. It actually hit me hardest because I'm playing the squishiest tank right now. Buff Brewmaster. And rinse and repeat. So now there's more spawns, More spawns with the sprouts. I move them over. Get ready for an infusion strike. Infused strike. That's the word. And then position him for a funnel. It's going to be kind of challenging on this fight to not let your team die to aggro on the slimes. That's the last thing I should say. Alright, so now you're going to the second boss area. It's a very long run. If you die from here on out, the NPC, Syndragosa, I think? Yeah, this lady that's right in front of me on the video. She gives you a 75% speed buff to run back. So, like, we don't get a speed buff right here, but if you die from here on out, you get one to run back to the group. These are more of those shrieking whelps. Just make sure you avoid these. This pack is absolute death. Like, if you ever pull this pack, it is... I don't know. There's no way. 4 of those guys are insane. One of them almost one-shots Brewmaster right now. Just one of the Crystal Furies. This is a very inefficient pull. I was kind of testing some stuff out. If you can skip this in any way, you definitely should. Like, we should have just Shrouded in this case. Because you can make it count easily later. But we end up killing these. These are a preview of the rest of the trash that are coming up in the ring area, I like to call it. These have just they have a sleep that goes out. So this is about to go on to Luigi, this Waking Bane cast, and that's the primary kick. So you can see he is now asleep. He needs to be dispelled by his healer. It's magic dispellable. And now he's good. But you definitely want to assign those or just let people get dispelled, either way. The only other thing they do is this Arcane Bolt cast. And I want to say it only goes on the tank. Oh, I missed something important. Well, it's not that important, but let me go back just a little bit. So there's an item right over there past these 2 elementals before you pull them. My Warlock went around and grabbed it because he's an Inscriptionist, but Inscriptionists can pick up this tome and it gives you an extra action button. It's like a Necrotic Wake item. And what it does is it reverses the polymorph runes that are on the floor that are coming up. Alright, so now I'm going to skip ahead. So this is the ring area. So first of all, these are the polymorph runes that I was talking about. So that item can, like, I think it puts down like a circle this big. So maybe you could get both of these runes if you wanted with it, but that's it. So it's like a one-time use per tome. I think there's 2 tomes total in the dungeon. There might be more though, I'm not sure. It's not incredibly useful, it just polymorph stuff. So it would just be used for like a stop. It breaks off of a little bit of damage. He uses it later in the key, and I'll try to point it out. Alright, so now that you're in the ring area, there's 2 rings in this dungeon. You have to fight all the trash that's on this ring to go down. And then you have to fight most of the trash on the second ring that's down there below us. But what's weird about this is that you get this Waking Wild Magic, whatever it's called. Wild Magic coalesces around you. It's effect unknown on the screen right there. And this can give you a random buff out of 5 different possibilities. So let me pull them up here. I'm not going to edit the video, but that was just something I was studying for work. Alright, so first you can get like a Viscous Toads buff, which basically just AoE CCs around you briefly. It's like a end cap every 10 seconds, and you get that buff for 1 minute. That's one possible buff. You can get a Scornful Haste buff, which is something that increases everyone's haste around you by 15%, and enemies' haste by 30% around you. I think that might have been changed a little bit. That might not be accurate, actually. That's on Wowhead, but I think it's slightly inaccurate. And then there's Shrinking Form, another buff, which increases your movement speed, but increases your damage taken by 5%. So that's just a bad one. And then currently there's also a Hardening Scales buff, reduces your movement speed, and it reduces your damage taken by 5%. So that one's actually good for tanks. And then there's one that just literally does nothing. It just slows things around you by 25%. And you have a chance of just not getting a buff at all. Really weird RNG on all this. But yeah. Alright, so now I'm pulling mobs throughout this area. Like I said, you have to clear out this entire upper ring to go down. You might be able to skip this with like a slow fall or something, I don't know, but I think you need the count anyway, so you might as well just pull it. One thing I should have done here is pulled these mobs back right away to avoid this patrol that we're now worrying about. It's kind of hard to move these mobs, so you might have to like pull this guy back as soon as you pull the pack before he starts casting while planted. These are the same elemental mobs that I was telling you about earlier. The big guy doesn't really do much that you have to worry about specifically as the tank. He just does these swirlies that disorient you and they do a ton of damage. This is a new mob though, this Seal Keeper, Rune Seal Keeper right here. This is a 2-kick rotation on it. So technically these 3 mobs have 4 kicks total that they need. They have the elementals both do the Waking Bane Sleep, and this Rune Seal Keeper has a 2-kick rotation on its mass root that it does. And you should be casting it again right after this. There's like icy bindings, if you can see that. So yeah, that one went off. I got rooted. Tigers listed it off. But you should definitely kick that because it roots everybody. As you can see, there's polymorph runes everywhere. If you ever get hit by one of those polymorph runes, it literally end caps you for 20 seconds. Ridiculous. Alright, so there's one more new mob in this pack, and this is the Arcane or Crystal Fury mob that I was talking about earlier. This is the focus for you as the tank. Anytime you see one of these mobs, do everything you can to stop their Piercing Shards cast. So here it comes. I end capped it immediately, and it'll recast again in like 10 seconds, I think. Piercing Shards does massive magic damage in our frontal cone, aimed at the tank, and it leaves a dot as well if it goes off. Here's another cast. I killed it before it got off. Yeah, these swirlies on the ground, hopefully they change those, but those swirlies that were everywhere right there are so hard to see. Good luck with those. This is another new mob. We saw a petrified version of this earlier, but this Crystal Thrasher is a little dangerous as well. This Crystalline Rupture will kill you. I stopped the frontal, but then I didn't run out in time. I was distracted by something, so I died. So that AoE actually just one-shots. He puts out these AoE circles on people. I think they just blow up for minor damage. And I think that's pretty much all he does. He does a melee, an anti-melee mechanic, the AoE there, and then he puts out those circles. Here's the anti-melee AoE, Crystalline Rupture. You could probably combine this with the prior pack with some good coordination and practice. So here goes the Splintering Shards that go on players. Let's see if they still do damage. I don't think they did damage there. Alright, this is a scary pack because as you can see there's 2 Crystal Furies. If you went right on this platform, I think this is the first pack you get to. Instead we went left. So we have like all the space to fight this. I'd probably advise going left because if you pull this first and then you also get the patrol, you're probably going to die. So one thing you should know is, I'll include an auto marker in the description once it's all ready, but I auto marked these mobs, they're Moon and Star. They can only cast Piercing Shards 1 at a time. This is kind of a recent thing that Blizzard added to some Tank Buster mobs, where they can only cast their Tank Buster 1 mob at a time. So you'll see like the Whelps and Ruby Life Pool do that, for example. One of them will cast Cold Claws, and then the next one will cast Cold Claws, and so on and so on and so on. But what you want to do is have someone ready to stop all these Piercing Shard casts. So what I did in this case is my Rogue Luigi is going to stop Moon, and I'm going to stop Star. So I just called, I'll get Star, and he'll get Moon. So I paralyzed the first one. Looks like he kidney shotted the first one on Moon. Make sure you dodge all these swirlies. And then I sweep this one on Star. And then I think Moon goes off and kills us. So that's what happens when Piercing Shard gets off. But it was also bolstered too. It might not have killed me if it wasn't bolstered. Oh, this is going to be a long video, but that's okay. There's a lot to talk about in this dungeon. I'll try to point out more of these buffs. I think we'll get another buff here in a sec. The wild magic thing happens every 1.5 to 2 minutes. I was looking through some logs, and I think you have to, like, when you very first get to this platform, like as soon as I landed, I started getting that animation. I think it's supposed to happen then, and when you first get to the prior platform, and then like maybe there's a 2-minute interval in between while you're on the same platform or something. But yeah, let's see what buffs we get here. So in this case, looks like Luigi got the one buff. So it shows up as a debuff, but I think that's the haste circle, maybe. Yeah, so Luigi has this circle around him. That's one of the buffs you can get. That's the Scornful Haste that I talked about earlier. So I don't even think he benefits from it, but everybody around him and the mobs receive the haste. So it's kind of awkward. Like even the tank can get it and you're just absolutely screwed. This is terrible design in my opinion, but like if I were to get it, the circle would be like this. My ranged players wouldn't benefit, but every single mob would benefit and probably just destroy me. Alright, so let me talk about some of these mobs now. So the new mobs here are these arcane constructs. They basically just do a very dangerous frontal cleave that you want to avoid. You've fought these elementals already, and then this rune keeper is that 2-kick guy. So the kicks in this pack, this is a combined 2-pack plus a 3-pack patrol. The kicks are these 2 elementals for the Waking Bane sleeps, and then 2 kicks on the rune keeper. And the root is very dangerous when you're fighting these frontal guys. I got hit with one of them right there. I almost died. They're really hard to see. I think it's called Arcane Bash is the frontal. Hopefully they change the animation on this too. I just got rooted, popping all my defensives. Eat the frontal. Luckily I survive. There's another Arcane Bash. As you can see, there's like a little Night Fate orb as their frontal animation. There's a bash. Ooh, I ate that one. I was very distracted this dungeon, if I remember. I was like looking at all the wild magic buffs that people are getting. So I chained into these Ellies again. There's another... I think it's 2 Ellies and another construct. So now there's 3 construct and 2 Ellies. That's fine. Just 2 kicks. I tried to ring these. You cannot ring them. They're lieutenant mobs. Just gotta tank them and avoid them. Yeah, so I think their frontals are like that big. Arcane Bash goes something like that. You just want to sidestep slowly, kind of like in the Quarter Stars video. You want to just be tanking these while rotating around the pack in a 180-degree fashion. So you don't cleave your melee, but you're also like naturally going to avoid lots of the frontals without having to worry about it. I ate this one because I was looking at something. So Toll has the haste buff now. So it's like swapping around the group. So you can see that circle on him. That's the Scornful Haste buff. And then I think, if I remember right, somebody else gets one of the other buffs here. These buffs are... I need to do more research on these. And I'm sure they're going to change them more, but I don't know exactly what triggers them or how often they happen, or like if there's a location requirement. It seems incredibly random. Alright, so this is the next area. This is the actual second boss area now. So that's the boss right there. You want to clear out probably all this trash. All this trash isn't too bad in this entire room. So I'm pulling those 2 Ice Cutter mobs into this 3-pack. The Ice Cutter mobs, and what I mean by that is these Vault Guards right here, the 2 at the doorway. They basically just hit the tank with Ice Cutter. It's like I think it's a physical tank buster attack. It's not too bad. There's an Astral Attendant, a Rune Seal Keeper, and another Vault Guard. So there's 3 Ice Cutter mobs total. And then there's 1 Astral Attendant. And then the Rune Seal Keeper that does the root. So make sure you kick that root. Yeah, Ice Cutter must be physical because I didn't get one shot there. And then, yeah, this trash is pretty simple. These astral attendants are just annoying because of the swirly zipping on the ground. That's all they really do. So you can pull this lieutenant in with this pack. This lieutenant is like an empowered version of the guard. He does ice cutter as well, but then he also has this magic damage breath that channels on you for like 4 ticks, looks like. So you want to make sure you have some kind of defensive every time he breathes. I think it's like a 10-second, 15-second cooldown. And you can chain him into other packs after this stuff dies too, if you can handle it. The aura around him, the big circle you see, increases damage done by his allies. I think it's like a 25% damage buff. So just be aware of that as well. As emitted that breath. It definitely does a lot of damage. He's a little scary. He was bolstered 3 times though, to be fair. These 2 Vault Guards are optional. They're out of the way. You don't have to pull them, but I'm pulling them here just because I would have, even if we, or I would have had to if we skipped the 2 solo Ellies earlier. They're a good way to make up that count. And they're not too bad. They just do the ice cutter move. So I'm going to pull those 2 plus this guy into the remaining pack before the boss. They get that buff if you see. I think it's a condensed frost buff. I don't think I've ever scrolled over that buff, but I assume it's just some kind of damage reduction. This is another one of the seal keepers. Make sure you kick the root. I see bindings. And that's about it. I'll have to look up that buff on the Vault Guards and post it in the comments. I haven't done this dungeon as much as like Ruby Life Pools or the other old dungeons. Algathar. I've done Algathar a lot. Alright, this is the second boss, Azureblade. This is a really cool boss. Basically just face him away from the group because he will do a giant frontal with his awesome looking sword here right now, Arcane Cleave. It's for magic damage. Make sure you have something to live that. He does that every 10 seconds or so. And then pull him to the ad right after he frontal cleaves you. Wait till he frontals to pull him to the ad. Unless you have like all ranged players or something. There you go. Then I move to the ad. This one's a little dangerous. So he spawned this ad right in the middle of the room. That's really dangerous because he's about to do this intermission where he sends out projectiles all around him. So this ad is actually like horrible luck for us. And I don't know if we live this or not. I think we do. Yeah, we do. Luckily, I taught it, and then we moved on to the intermission. So the key here is to stay as a group. You need, especially if you're running with an invoker healer, you need to make sure you're in like a small range for them to heal you efficiently. So I usually like to say, just go to the closest ad and then move clockwise around the room, like that as a group. Otherwise, someone's gonna die. The boss just pulses AoE this entire intermission until all the ads die. The AoE does the same damage regardless of how many ads are up as well. And then back to phase 1 and rinse and repeat. Use any spare kicks on those ads, obviously. There's no kick on the boss, so you might as well. Arcane Cleave. It's gonna be a scary tyrannical boss. I got stunned because I didn't clear my thundering. F. And we've got a second intermission here at 1:35 into the fight. It's probably good that I was holding the boss way off there to the side, because it had, I think there's a certain radius he can spawn ads around players, so it like guaranteed that he couldn't spawn an ad in the middle of the room. You probably actually want to pull the boss really far from the middle of the room because of that. Might be the best practice. But we end up clearing out this boss. Let me skip a little bit because this is a long video. And there's the end of the boss fight. So we killed him. Now we go to the exit over here toward the last 2 bosses. The last 2 bosses are back to back, so there's actually only one more wing of trash here. Luckily, even though this seems like Sanguine Depths, there's not an insanely long gauntlet. There's actually a fun section at the end of this dungeon instead. So this is the last area. I think there's another inscription tome back there, where we just came from. I could be mistaken though. And you can pull all this trash basically. Even on bolstering, I ended up living this. It was a little scary, but all this trash is much easier than all the trash in the rest of the dungeon. I'd highly advise just killing all this. The only dangerous thing for you is the looters. So they all just ended up dying. There's one left right here, this Terrasec looter. It's like the little dude. There's one running in from the side actually, we can watch him. These looters do a tear flesh move. One of them hit Luigi there because I didn't have throw down it yet, and it almost killed him. But that bleed they leave on you is the dangerous part. Everything else here, you don't have to worry about really. But watch those bleeds, tear flesh. And then mark. I'll have an auto marker for this as well, but this guy that's doing the shoulder slams, he's the important mob for the rest of the party to cleave from. He's definitely the biggest mob, the most health, and he does the shoulder slam move and an AoE shout that does damage to everybody. Here it is, Bestial Roar, boom. Everyone takes some damn, and that's about it. The frogs you can just cleave down. The frogs are great. They just jump around. You can stop their jump as well with like Vortex and Ring of Peace and any other AoE CCs. These are all just the same mobs. The looters, once again, are the important thing for you. So I did this whole area in 3 pulls, I think. You could do it in 4 pulls and be safe, though. It's not a big deal. You just want to manage these looters. So like this, in this pull I have 4 looters, maybe even more coming from up top. So I'll start taking some heavy damage here pretty quick. I got shoulder slammed by the big guy there. He can't pick the tank, unfortunately. And as soon as these looters die, even though they're going to bolster everything, I'd start taking much less damage. Whew. You can ring everything or CC everything except for the big guy. Breaker. Yeah, looking at this again, maybe don't pull this big, especially on bolstering. Classes that do big AoE cleave are probably really good for these pulls because these mobs jump around so much. They're a little awkward for melee. Then again, melee are tuned very well at the moment. They're tuned very high on the damage. So they can probably still keep up. But like, let's say Boomkin was tuned to be high damage, then Boomkin would really, really excel in this area. It's also probably good practice for your range to stand and your healer to stand near the packs so that the frogs don't jump so far. There's a good example. I used Ring to just like knock him out of his landing spot, and he went back to his starting spot because he couldn't land there. And also, you could use like these areas have all these traps so close together. I think with the inscription tome, you could hit all 3 of these with one blanket use, and they would turn friendly. So like if you moved mobs into them, they get polymorphed. I think earlier in the video, the warlock cast at them, so he showed an example of that. Here's just a bunch more looters. I think I was filling up the looters for bolstering purposes here and then pulling everything else. Just a little experiment. Almost got polymorphed, that was close. Yeah, we're going to be a little bit over count because I pulled those 2 elementals earlier, but otherwise I think this was perfect count. Let me fast forward a little bit. So all that's going to happen here is I finish killing these frogs and then we pull the 2 breakers before the last 2 bosses. So these breakers, I think you can actually, like someone could pull these away in theory and everybody else clicks the book. So technically these are skippable, but they definitely would not be easy to to skip in most groups. You probably have to have some kind of character that could vanish and then instantly get to the book to click it before they got back. But yeah, these are the same breakers. They just do the shoulder slams on random targets. They knock you back when they do that, and then they also do the AoE shout. What's dangerous here, you want to pull them back to where I did here so that people don't get knocked off the edge. Like if you tank them near the edge, someone's probably going to fall off. And that's it. So now we just got 2 bosses. This is the 3rd boss, Telash Greywing. So this is an interesting boss. I don't know if they've changed it since I've known about this, but there's 3 runes that you have to use in this area. And once you've used all 3 runes, I think you're just out of runes for the rest of the boss fight. And you have to use them to survive her, or his, whatever they are, AoE one-shot that happens every minute or so. It's kind of like the last boss of Sanguine Depths. Except that you only have 3 uses instead of unlimited uses of the shield. So those frost bombs drop right there. Let me back up a little. Well, we can just keep watching actually, but those frost bombs drop and you want to get out of them as soon as they drop. If you're fast enough, you can avoid taking the ticking damage right after completely. So like if you have a short movement spell like roll, like right there, I didn't take an extra tick. And that's pretty big because that absolute 0 cast happens right after that second set. So the absolute 0 is the AoE one-shot, quote-unquote. You have to use one of those runes every time. I think it's like a 75% damage reduction inside the rune. And then the cadence is the same for the rest of the fight. So the boss drops these ice bombs, everyone just spreads out so they don't cleave on each other. You get out of the bombs immediately after, and then the boss will cast this Icy Devastator beam on a player right after you get out of the first set of bombs. So whoever gets that cast needs to be ready to pop something. The beam doesn't do nearly as much as the bombs do, though. Here's another frost bomb. I like cut off my melee there. So it's just important to try to move out of those before you take a tick of damage. Here's the Icy Devastator. You want to spread out with that because it does cleave around the target as well. Here's frost bombs. And then after this, I think the boss goes and does the... Yeah, so here's absolute 0. It's like once a minute. This is the second rune we're using. And then here comes the spicy overlap again after this. So the boss will do frost bombs, and then right out of this frost bombs, we get one of the beams. I keep wanting to call it Castigate. I've got this like image that this dungeon is just Sanguine Depths. Icy Devastator, that's what it's called. So there it goes again. That could have potentially been a kill on one of our players, but they're ready for it. Here's the second frost bomb. I guess the boss does 3 frost bombs between each one of the AoE abilities. You don't really have to conserve space at the moment because, like I said, the fight only has 3 of those runes available for you to survive. Hopefully they change that, so maybe you will want to conserve space eventually. Because if they don't change that, then like this fight will be hard capped on Tyrannical at like +20 or something with max gear. Here's the last absolute 0. As you can see, the other runes aren't even lit up. They're just gone over there. So this is our only rune left. And hopefully they change that. But yeah, I think ideally, if they make changes, then this ice would start to disappear, and you would just have... You have to like move slowly or slower throughout the room than we are now, but you'd be able to get back to this room for the next hit if this were a longer boss fight. I'm assuming that's what they're going to do. And that's the end of that boss. Once you kill the boss, you can take this last book downstairs. And you just got one more boss fight. So the spicy thing about this boss is that it's going to slow you the entire time. Like if you make any kind of movement on the boss, it'll give you stacks of this big slow. And to drop the slow, you have to stand still for 10 seconds, which can be really difficult at times. Or you can use some kind of freedom spell like Tiger's Lust, Freedom, Avatar works. Thundering actually works and saves me, I think, in this run. Maybe it was a different run. But this is how slow you are, so look how slow I'm going. I'm trying to avoid these swirlies. And there's lots of things in this fight that make you move, so I think they're probably going to change this fight a little bit too. Here's the tank hit. Oh, she actually canceled it. Welcome back to the tank hit. But at 75% health, she's just at 75 here. At 50% and at 25% health, she spawns these crystals around the room. And they can be clumped up or they can be all solo like that. And you want to make sure that everybody is able to kill these as efficiently as possible, because if they explode, then everyone takes a huge dot. There's the tank hit called Dragon Strike. It leaves a dispellable debuff on you that does ticking damage, and it also does magic damage up front. It might be a mix of physical and magic damage. But it's ticking me pretty hard, if you can see. I've still got this massive slow. Here's the only cast you'll probably see of this Unleashed Destruction. That's just like a party-wide AoE. It used to one-shot earlier in beta, if you guys played beta, but now it doesn't do too much damage, luckily. Yeah, it did like 20% of our health there. That might be tuned a little bit more before release as well, but we'll see. Here's another Dragon Strike. This fight is just full of mechanics. It's actually going to be weird because it'll feel probably at a better pace the higher key level you do, because it won't do these health threshold moves so fast back to back. That was interesting. So if you saw it hit 50, the boss hit 50% there and canceled the Dragon Strike, even though it was like this far from being done on the cast. So if it hits the health threshold, it just cancels whatever it's casting. And then the last thing I haven't talked about is, well, there's a frontal, but you just move out of the breath, obviously. Aims at a random player, move out of the breath, and then throughout the fight, the boss spawns these orbs. And I think they're supposed to just target players and slowly chase them down, forcing you to move and deal with the slow mechanic of the fight. But they tend to all focus on one player eventually. It's really interesting. Not sure how it works. There's the breath. But yeah, this boss seems a little unfinished, but it is a cool boss. We'll see where it lands on release. The main thing for tanks, just make sure you have everything or something for Dragon Strike. You can diffuse that off, by the way, if you're a monk. You can spell reflect it, I believe, if you're a warrior, unless they've changed it. And yeah, that hit me pretty hard. Here's the last hardened crystal phase. I think it might be worth tanking this boss near a wall as well. Usually I do that on beta. God, look at all those orbs. They're all like on one player now. Not sure how they work. But anyway, so you can tank the boss near the walls, and I think that might help with this crystal spawns to be more clumped. Or just gives them a better chance to be more clumped. Or you can tank it in the middle like I did here. Just have more room for activities. Yeah, this boss is nuts though. Like, I can't even imagine this dungeon on Tyrannical right now. Hopefully it gets a little bit better. And that's Azure Vaults. So, I talked about a lot of stuff in this. I probably missed a few things. I don't even fully understand how the buffs work in the ring area. I will learn a lot more about that before launch, and I'll probably mention that in the comments if I do. But let me know if you guys notice anything else that I might have missed. And I'll see you in the next one.